The night the city gathered at the old concert hall was meant to celebrate greatness already known. The marble floors echoed with polished shoes, expensive perfumes floated in the air, and conversations revolved around stock markets, art collections, and famous names. On the posters outside, one name stood taller than all the rest. Victor Langston, a pianist whose hands had touched the keys of the world's most prestigious stages. To many, he was not just a musician but a legend, a man whose talent was studied, admired, and feared by younger pianists. Victor himself, however, felt empty. Backstage, he sat alone, staring at his hands. These hands had earned him standing ovations in Paris, New York, Vienna, and Tokyo. Yet tonight they felt heavy. Music had once been his escape, his breath, his reason to wake up. Now it felt like a responsibility, a performance repeated so many times that its magic had faded. He sighed, standing up and adjusting his jacket. Just get through it, he muttered to himself. Play well, smile, leave. Outside the grand hall, far from the warm lights and velvet seats, a boy sat on the concrete steps near the side entrance. He was small for his age, his clothes clean but worn, his shoes scuffed at the toes. His skin was dark, his face calm, and his eyes, clouded and unfocused, stared gently into the distance. The boy's name was Micah Johnson, and he was blind. Beside him lay an old keyboard, missing a few keys. Some notes didn't work unless pressed just right. The power cable was taped together, and the speaker crackled if the volume was too high. Yet Micah treated it like a treasure. His fingers rested on it with care, as if he were touching something alive. Music drifted through the walls of the concert hall. Micah tilted his head slightly, listening. He smiled. He didn't know the name of the pianist playing inside, but he recognized the piece. He always did. Music stayed with him. Every melody he ever heard lived inside his mind, perfectly preserved. He couldn't see faces, buildings, or colors, but sound painted pictures far richer than sight ever could. Micah began to play. At first, his music was quiet, almost shy. People passing by barely noticed. But then the melody grew bolder, more confident. It wasn't random. It wasn't simple. It was complex, layered, full of emotion. His fingers moved naturally, finding the right notes even when keys were missing. During intermission, Victor Langston stepped outside for air. The applause from his first set still rang faintly in his ears, but his heart felt untouched. He loosened his tie and inhaled the cool night air. That's when he heard it. At first, he thought it was someone playing a recording. Then he realized it was live music, coming from somewhere nearby. Victor frowned. He followed the sound, irritated that someone would dare play piano outside his concert. As he turned the corner, he saw the boy sitting on the steps. A blind black child, playing a broken keyboard. Victor almost scoffed, but then he listened. The melody stopped him cold. It was not simple street music. It was not imitation. It was interpretation. The boy was weaving classical structure with soulful improvisation, turning a familiar piece into something deeply personal. Victor stepped closer, his irritation replaced by disbelief. That's enough, he said sharply. Micah's fingers froze. His head snapped up toward the voice. I'm sorry, sir, Micah said softly. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I can stop. Victor studied him closely. The boy wasn't pretending. His eyes didn't track movement. His face carried no arrogance, no performance, only sincerity. What were you playing? Victor asked. Micah thought for a moment. I'm not sure what it's called, he admitted. I heard it on the radio once. I just play what I remember and what I feel. Victor let out a short laugh. You don't even know the name? Micah shook his head. No, sir. Victor crossed his arms. Play something else, he said. Just for fun. Micah hesitated. He wasn't used to being asked by someone with such a sharp voice. But music had always been his safe place. He placed his fingers back on the keys. And then he played. The first notes were gentle. Then they deepened. The melody rose and fell like a conversation between sorrow and hope. Victor felt his breath catch. This wasn't memorization. This was understanding. The boy anticipated chord changes before they happened, resolved tension naturally, and added subtle variations that even trained professionals struggled to master. Victor's world shifted. How old are you? He asked when Micah finished 12. Micah replied, And you're blind from birth? Yes, sir. Victor felt something tighten in his chest. He had dedicated his entire life to music. Years of elite training, strict teachers, brutal discipline. And here was a child who had learned by listening, feeling, absorbing. Do you know who I am? Victor asked. Micah smiled faintly. I can hear that you're important. People who speak like you usually are. Victor almost laughed. Almost. Without fully understanding why, Victor made a decision that startled even himself. Come inside with me, he said. Micah's smile faded. I can't. I don't have a ticket. You have an invitation, Victor replied. For me. Security tried to object, but Victor silenced them with a look. Minutes later, Micah found himself backstage, surrounded by sounds he had never heard so closely. The hum of stage lights, whispered conversations, the creak of polished wood. Victor guided Micah toward the grand piano on stage. Micah reached out and touched it. His fingers trembled. It feels different, he whispered. That's because it's listening to you, Victor said. Now, play. Micah sat down. The audience expected Victor Langston to return. Instead, they watched a blind boy take his place. Confusion rippled through the hall. Some frowned. Some whispered. A few looked annoyed. Then Micah began to play. The first note silenced the room. The second broke hearts. Music poured out of him. Not practiced, not rehearsed, but honest and raw. Every note carried emotion. Every pause spoke louder than sound. It was as if Micah wasn't playing for applause, but telling his life story through the keys. Victor stood in the shadows, tears forming in his eyes. He realized something painful and beautiful at the same time. This boy felt music the way he once did, before fame, before critics, before expectations. When the final note faded, no one moved. Then the applause erupted. People stood. Some cried openly. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Micah stood up slowly, confused by the sudden noise. Did I do something wrong? He whispered. Victor walked onto the stage and placed a hand on Micah's shoulder. You did something unforgettable, he said. That night changed everything. Victor paid for Micah's education, his instruments, his training, but never tried to shape him into something else. Don't become me, Victor told him. Become more. Years passed. Micah grew. His name became known across the world, not as a curiosity, not as a miracle, but as a musician whose soul could be heard in every note. And Victor Langston, the man once known as the greatest pianist alive, found peace in knowing that true greatness isn't about being the best in the room. Sometimes, it's about recognizing a gift when it sits on cold steps outside a concert hall, waiting for someone to listen.